Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Let's all say Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Charine Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We're doing okay, huh? All right. We'll find out. Hare Krishna. Okay, we're down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there were 10. Well, 11 with Maharaj. The faithful are back. Thanks for coming. Okay. 4 more lessons. Lesson 7. This is the last lesson of Abhideya. Sambandha is knowledge of the relationship. Abhideya is acting in the relationship. And this afternoon we'll start Prayojana, the fruit of the relationship. Knowledge, process, result. Lesson 7, finding our mission in his mission. I hear a buzz. Is that? You got to have an alternative for the kiddies. There you go. He voted with his feet. Lesson 7, finding our mission in his mission. At the end of the last lesson, we took a look at the unfulfilled phase of our founder Acharya's mission, the demonstration of a spiritually classless society through the development of Daiva Varnashram communities, living the way Krishna lives, in a natural village setting. Such communities would offer us and the world a practical vision of how Krishna culture works on earth, the Lord's positive alternative to the suffering and impersonalism imposed by our misdirected modern civilization. Yet, so here comes the but, yet, since many of us were born and raised in Kali's cities and suburbs, we may find ourselves neither ready, willing, nor able to follow Srila Prabhupada into the Varnashram frontier. And we may wonder what our place is in our founder Acharya's greater mission to re-spiritualize humanity. In this lesson, we'll take a look at how to find our natural place in our founder Acharya's worldwide movement, with the help of senior devotees thoroughly grounded in Srila Prabhupada's life, teachings, mood, and mission. So as I mentioned, here's Srila Prabhupada. And yet another famous shot taken by my godbrother Bhargava Prabhu, BBT photographer back in the day. Here, Bhargava captured Prabhupada in a very deep, internal, meditative mood. Does anybody have a favorite image you'd like to describe of your Srila Prabhupada? Yes, Maharaj. You got the... Where's the mic? Okay. It's not an easy question, because there are so many favorites, right?
One that attracts me is Prabhupada sitting, and he's in a sitting position, and his one leg is up, and he's got his hand pointed down, and he's almost touching his feet with his hand, which is, Bhaktisiddhanta sits like that, and there's a meaning for that.
It's a mudra.
Means this is where you learn everything.
At the lotus feet of the Guru. Very good.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a picture. Prabhupada's smiling, his face is up like that, and his hand is down like this. And he's in a sitting posture, which is not a lotus, but it's a combination of combination posture.
Prabhupada knew how to use his hands when he spoke. There's certain hand positions that are good at driving home points, and Prabhupada knew how to do that. Finding our mission in his mission is largely about finding guides who can help us make our best contribution to Srila Prabhupada's Hare Krishna movement. Okay, let's, where's the mic? Keep the mic here. We need a runner. Who wants to, you want to be a runner? We got a taker here. Okay. Be ready, Prabhu. Okay, Mataji, you want to read that?
Importance of doing our own duty.
There's Krishna and Arjuna famously blowing the conchas to begin the Gita. In the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, after summarizing the qualities and work of different types of human beings, Lord Krishna describes how everyone can become perfect. There we go.
By following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now please hear from me how this can be done. Bhagavad Gita 18:45.
And
by worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work.
I mentioned this last night. The very work which would ordinarily bind us, if we do it for Krishna, can free us. That's great, huh? We don't have to be somebody else. One famous writer said, "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." So we just be ourselves, but for Krishna. In every age we are born ignorant, but especially in the Kali age, we often have difficulty knowing who we are and what our duty is. Okay, two famous paintings. One of the Death of Socrates. We actually have a very thorough account of Socrates' departure from this world because somebody was taking notes. So as you may know, Socrates was condemned to death by the Athenian court for preaching heresy. The heresy was the immortality of the soul. And also the powers that be felt that he was minimizing the gods, you know, the demigods. So they condemned him to death by hemlock. He was to drink the hemlock. There's the cup. So his disciple, one of his disciples, tearfully handing him the cup. Now this is Socrates' friend, Crito, and Crito is trying to convince Socrates not to drink the hemlock because they have a way out of the prison, and they say, look, you've been unfairly condemned to death. We can get you out of here. Don't drink the hemlock. Socrates is 70 years old, I believe. Yeah. And he's ready to go. He says he's taught everything he's had to say, and he's not afraid of death because, let's see here. Well, first of all, Socrates is famous for quotes like, "Know thyself. The unexamined life is not worth living." So he knew who he was. He knew who he was. When his old friend Crito asks, "How should we bury you?" They just gave up trying to dissuade him from drinking the hemlock. So finally Crito says, "How should we bury you?" Socrates replies, "However you want to. If you can actually catch me, and I don't escape you." Srila Prabhupada praised Socrates for realizing he wasn't his body. You may be able to bury this body, but I'm gone. I'm out of here, right? So of all the Western philosophers, Prabhupada said Socrates was the best because he was Brahman realized. He knew he wasn't his body. Now, nearly 2,000 years later, in Hamlet, Shakespeare has his character Polonius speak the now famous line, "This above all, to thine own self be true." But Polonius's self-conception is more one of worldly self-interest, a distinct downgrade from Socrates' spiritual conception. So Polonius is moralizing to his son Laertes, "This above all, to thine own self be true." But if you know the play, what Polonius meant by self is your self-interest in this world. You got to look out for number one, right? That means yourself, your worldly self. So, what is it, 400? So almost 2,000 years after Socrates, Shakespeare's character is introducing a degraded conception of self. The body, the mind, well, especially in that context, it was the mind. And now, when we walk in the supermarket, there's a magazine, sometimes it's there, it's called Self magazine. Do you have this in Chicago? Who do you think's on the cover of Self magazine? Or what do you think? Some good-looking lady or some good-looking guy showing off their curves, you know, their muscles, their shape. So, and the dominant self-concept today, typified by the American magazine Self, promotes absolute absorption in the gross material body. Okay, now here's a question. Given that sequence from spirit to mind to body, we ask a question now.
In Kali Yuga, why is it so difficult to know who we are and what our duty is?
Now in the next slide, we're going to hear Srila Prabhupada preaching to the World Health Organization in Geneva in 1974. And I've excerpted from the talk, and it's going to be an answer to this question. In Kali Yuga, why is it so difficult to know who we are and what our duty is? So let's hear Prabhupada talking to the World Health Organization.
The basic civilization is Varnashram. If the Varnashram dharma is not properly protected, then there will be population who are called Varnashram, mixed population.
In Kali Yuga, why is it so difficult to know who we are and what our duty is? Prabhupada has answered that right there. We're going to have Maharaj tell us.
Well, one thing, there's no samskars, rites of passage, which moves persons through different phases of life and helps to give an identity to the individual's activities and to the person.
Yeah, there's no spiritual progress, and so everybody is at the mercy of their ever-changing bodies and minds. Very good. Varna Sankara, it means unwanted population. It also means mixed population. Quite literally in Kali Yuga, because we're not coming in pure lineages, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, we're a mixed bag of tricks. So have you noticed in your own consciousness how mixed it can be? How we have conflicting tendencies toward action. You know, a part of us is maybe very Brahminical or Kshatriya, and a part of us is very Shudra-like, and so we're quite literally all mixed up in Kali Yuga. Small wonder then that professions like life coaching and occupational therapy have become growth industries. To understand who we are and what our duty is, we Kali Yugans, disconnected from a Varnashram culture of self-realization, need help. The first help a spiritual culture provides is spiritually minded parents. I was delighted to find on Google Images a Hare Krishna Vaishnavi Mata with her daughter reading baby Krishna book, child's Krishna book to her daughter. To determine our prescribed duty, we need help. So in a spiritual society, you have spiritual parents. And you learn your mother tongue from your mother. She's the first guru. Now, okay, so let's listen to some heavy words from Lord Rishabdev about the responsibility of being a parent. Here it is. Where's the mic? Okay.
One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod.
Prabhupada comments, this is real contraceptive method. If you think that if a child is born, I shall educate him in such a way that this birth will be his last birth. Next, he is going back to home, back to Godhead. Then produce a child. Otherwise, don't produce. This is spiritual contraceptive. This is real father and real mother. Otherwise, a dog is also becoming a father, but such kind of father becoming is not recommended in the Vedic civilization. Now, just become a real father and give the real benefit to the son. Then you become a father. So, now Prabhupada's speaking this. That was in Melbourne, 22 April 1976. You know, here we are, we're like 42 years on from that. I mean, nowadays you have to first remind people of the connection between sexuality and children. Sex has become like a contact sport, right? And if there's some unwanted byproduct like a child, well, just get rid of it. You know, take a pill or take a contraceptive device. I mean, not a clue of the divine purpose of sex. Krishna says, Kamosmi. I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. So sexual energy is a powerful energy that the Lord has to encourage people to bring souls into the world to free them from the cycle of birth and death. You know, not a clue about that, most people. You have to first remind them of the connection between sex and children. It's like, wow, this is Kali Yuga. Underscoring the great responsibility of parents, Srila Prabhupada once wrote a devotee mother. Now here's the context for this letter. 1972 July. Okay, so we've caught on to big book distribution. And this mother, this lady, Vaishnavi, she wanted to get onto the wave. She wanted to catch the wave of book distribution and please Prabhupada like anything, because Prabhupada is so happy that finally his disciples are catching on how to distribute books in big quantities. So she has a little year and a half, yeah, not even 2, I don't believe. And she writes Prabhupada, and she said, Srila Prabhupada, I would really like to distribute your books. Could I put my child with some friends and let me go on and distribute books? I'd like to increase my deity worship to Sri Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish. Is this okay? So Prabhupada begins his reply by saying, I'm simply surprised that you have asked me if you can put your little boy with someone else. Quote, for you, child worship is more important than deity worship. These children are given to us by Krishna. They are Vaishnavas, and we must be very careful to protect them. These are not ordinary children. They are Vaikunta children. Famous phrase. This is where it came from, Prabhupada's letter. And we are very fortunate we can give them chance to advance further in Krishna consciousness. That's a very great responsibility. Do not neglect it. or be confused. Your duty is very clear. You know what Prabhupada said at the end of the letter? And if you find you can't take care of your little boy, then send him to me, and I will take care of him. Wow. So that was a really powerful way to end the letter. So she understood. So besides good parents, that's the first help we need, good parents. We also need good teachers and spiritual masters. Okay, so most of us know the story of Narada and Dhruva. Dhruva's only a little boy, 5 years old, but he's a Kshatriya. And he's got Kshatriya blood coursing through his veins, and then his stepmother, Suruchi, insults him. You cannot sit on the lap of the king. I am the favored queen, not your mother, unless and until you take birth from my womb. You cannot sit on the lap of the king. Such a mean-spirited comment. So Dhruva, he's only 5, but takes offense because he's Kshatriya. And he goes furious and crying to his mother Suruchi and tells her what happened. And Suruchi's a very humble lady. And she says, well, it's actually true, Dhruva. I'm not the favored queen. I really can't help you. I can't lobby, on your behalf to the king. But I know who can help you. I think only God can help you. And the great sages and rishis say that they find God in the forest. So maybe someday you will have to do that. Go to the forest and find the Lord. Dhruva is only 5 years old. He goes straight away to the forest. And he meets everybody's favorite guru, Narada Muni, who's always in the right place at the right time. Now, does anybody remember what let's close this door or something. We need to... thank you, Mataji. Anybody remember how Narada first tried to deal with Dhruva? Dhruva's saying, I'm furious. I want a kingdom greater than my father. I want a kingdom greater than my grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu. I want a kingdom greater than my great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. Right? He wants it all, and he wants it now. So what happened?
Narada Muni tried to discourage him by saying, you're a little child, why don't you go and play with your friends, toys, childhood is like that.
And also he did. And he also tried to appeal to, in other words, Dhruva was approaching him like a disciple. So he tried to appeal to the mentality of a disciple. And here's what he said. You can read this.
Narada to Dhruva, quote, one should try to keep himself satisfied in any condition of life, whether distress or happiness, which is offered by the Supreme Will. A person who endures in this way is able to cross over the darkness of nations very easily.
He's appealing to Dhruva's finer sentiments. He's trying reason and logic. There's different levels of persuasion. First we try reason and logic, and then we try flattery, then there's diplomacy, and then bribery. And what's the final method of persuasion? Boom! The stick. Dando damayatam asmi. Among punishments, I am the rod of chastisement. Okay, so very nice. Here you see Dhruva, or Narada's trying to appeal. There's the mudra right there. And Dhruva's listening. But listen, let's hear what Dhruva says back.
Dhruva to Narada, quote, my dear Lord, I am very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a Kshatriya family. Therefore, your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart.
This is very nice words for a nice, well-behaved Brahmin boy. I'm not a Brahmin. I've been insulted. You gotta tell me how to get to the Lord so I can get what I want. Right? Okay, now listen, here we're going to have Prabhupada commenting on this whole exchange in the purport. It's the only place that I'm aware of, there might be other places, where Prabhupada uses the word spirit to refer to psychophysical nature. So let's hear what Prabhupada says.
Dhruva Maharaj indirectly informed the great sage Narada that there are 4 kinds of human spirit: the Brahminical spirit, the Kshatriya spirit, the Vaishya spirit, and the Sudra spirit. The spirit is one caste is not the spirit of one caste is not applicable to the members of another.
What does Prabhupada mean by the word spirit there? It's not spirit soul. What is it?
The nature.
Nature. We have different natures. Brahminical people are motivated, inspired by what? The acquisition of knowledge. Kshatriyas are inspired by the acquisition of power. Vaishyas by wealth. And Shudras? Sense gratification. Basically. So Dhruva, Narada's words are true, but they don't connect with Dhruva's spirit or nature. And now Prabhupada is going to tell us something very important.
The philosophical spirit enunciated by Narada Muni may have been suitable for a Brahmana spirit, but it was not suitable for a Kshatriya. Dhruva frankly admitted that he was lacking in Brahminical humility and was therefore unable to accept the philosophy of Narada Muni.
Furthermore,
the statements of Dhruva Maharaj indicates that unless a child is trained according to his tendency, there is no possibility of developing his particular spirit. It was the duty of the spiritual master or teacher to observe the psychological movements of a particular boy and thus train him in a particular occupational duty.
Besides good parents, we also need good teachers and spiritual masters. In the last 2 slides of this section, under the heading to determine our prescribed duty, we need help, that the spiritual master must thoroughly understand. In the last 2 slides under the heading, we'll hear Srila Prabhupada drive home the same point, that the spiritual master must thoroughly understand the nature of his disciples to properly engage them in the Lord's service. So this is in Vrindavan, I think it's late September 1976, and you're going to hear him even more emphatically saying this in the spoken word. So let's hear Prabhupada describe this.
The spiritual master will say that you want life. That is natural. That's like in the school, college, somebody is being trained up as a scientist, somebody is trained up as an engineer, as a medical man, as a lawyer. They are according to the tendency, practical psychology. So of the student, he is advised that you take this class. So by the instruction of the Guru, the real purpose is to support the student. And according to his guna and karma, he is engaged in a particular occupational duty.
The closer Srila Prabhupada came to the end of his life, the more he emphasized a varnashram approach to engaging everyone in devotional service. Whereas surrender to Krishna during ISKCON's early days often meant giving up one's natural propensities for the sake of quickly spreading the movement worldwide, to make his mission sustainable for the long term, Srila Prabhupada was now highlighting the great need for everyone to identify and engage their natural propensities in Krishna's service. So that's what we're going to do now. Since spiritual masters play such crucial roles in helping us find our mission and Prabhupada's mission, how did Srila Prabhupada advise us to select our masters? So in the next slide, Now, there's Prabhupada chanting in his rooms in L.A., but the sound excerpt is actually from Miami. And I was there, but I don't remember him saying this. So we thank Prabhupada again and again for insisting that he be recorded. It's a little hard to hear because there's a plane flying overhead. The temple's in Coconut Grove, Miami, and the plane's flying. But you see the words, so let's listen to Prabhupada. Let's see, here we go.
That nobody should accept blindly any guru, and nobody should blindly accept any disciple. They must behave one another, at least for 1 year. This is the instruction by Narada Dhruva.
They must behave one another. What did Prabhupada mean? He meant to say, it wasn't quite the right word, but you can sort of determine what Prabhupada was getting at. Yeah, evaluate, examine, check out, vet. What do we say? We say vet these days. It's no joke. Just because you have a bona fide spiritual master, for example, and a bona fide candidate for initiation, doesn't mean those two people are necessarily going to work as master and disciple. And Prabhupada even compared it in the first Gita lecture ever recorded on March 2nd, 1966 in New York City. Prabhupada was then, he was probably it was either on the Bowery or in Dr. Mishra's yoga studio. He was comparing a disciple, a person approaching a master for initiation, like a boy and a girl getting to know each other and seeing if they could marry. So, yeah, just because you have a nice boy and a nice girl doesn't mean they could be husband and wife. And then here's another reference. This is from a Honolulu reference, Honolulu, Hawaii in January 74. Quote, in Hari Bhakti Vilas by Sanatana Goswami, it is directed that the spiritual master and the disciple must meet together for at least 1 year, so that the disciple may also understand that, quote, here is a person whom I can accept as my guru, and the guru also can see that, quote, here is a person who is fit for becoming my disciple. Then the business is nice. When I was presenting this series, Founder Acharya series in Dubai, anybody ever been to Dubai? Okay. So, you know, they have very nice yatra there, and they're preaching to the Indians who come to Dubai to work in this United Arab Emirates Muslim place. So the second time I came, the leader, Sri Bala Prabhu, he said, Prabhu, first, this time you just teach this to our Bhakti Vriksha leaders, of which there are many, because there's so many people. So before I taught, I asked them, how do you people introduce the Indians working in Dubai to our ISKCON Sangha? How do you bring them in? And so they said, oh, Prabhuji, first of all, we have the aspiring stage. And I said, wait a minute. You mean first of all you teach them how to approach a spiritual master in ISKCON? Yes, Prabhuji. Okay, let's back up a little bit. How about we start with a foundational stage? How about we introduce them to the founder Acharya? To the founder Acharya. And they were very polite. They didn't know what I was talking about, but they said, yes, Prabhuji. So I said, okay. So then I started teaching them about Srila Prabhupada's position. And then by the end of the series, when it was clear, it was very obvious to them that everyone's foundational spiritual master, regardless of so many Shiksha and Diksha gurus, is the founder Acharya, then they got it. And then I said, now do you understand? If you teach them prematurely how to aspire without a foundation, without Prabhupada, yeah, they will aspire, and then they will begin to perspire, and then they will expire. Because they don't have a foundation. Yes, Prabhuji. Maharaj.
And there seems to be another point that needs to be approached, and that is, what is a spiritual master and what is the duty of a disciple? That has to be there before you actually approach the spiritual master.
Of course, and that's what you find out in Prabhupada's Vani.
Yeah.
And also mainly by his example. Let's go to Hemangi Maharaji. Yeah.
This infatuation stuff is really, it's really a pain in the neck.
Thank you.
People get infatuated by a particular person, and then, you're my guru.
My guru's back, he's gonna save my reputation. Hey la, my guru. This is the kind of stuff we would satirize in the 80s. We'd make up these satirical songs, because if you criticize the system back in the 80s, you were run out of ISKCON as being an envious snake. So we had to resort to satire. Hey Mangi Maharaji.
Prabhu, can you elaborate a little bit about the stage of evaluation? Because I'm talking more in the modern context. Many gurus are very busy, they're traveling.
Right.
And what I see nowadays is go to ISKCON Desire Tree, click, 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 whoever you get inspired, you know, oh, maybe this is my guru, you know.
He's famous.
He's famous. So there is no proper evaluation, and even gurus are sometimes not accessible. Like not all gurus personally write emails and keep in touch, you know. And sometimes these gurus don't even provide for local leaders or a senior disciple to guide and to train. So it's almost like window shopping. It's and then you get initiated so quickly, and then the problems start when the anartha nivritti starts, you know, and then it becomes the responsibility of the local management team to somehow
Clean
take
up the
care.
mess.
Yeah. So can you please explain this whole process of evaluation in the modern context?
Okay. So this started in Prabhupada's time. Prabhupada, in our time, you know, in Prabhupada's time, he was the only guru in ISKCON. He was exploding a global movement. So how did he handle it? Now he's telling, right? He's telling there should be a mutual examination 6 months to a year. But could you do that with Srila Prabhupada? No. So what was Prabhupada's system? You know? Where's the mic? How did Prabhupada, he had to delegate that responsibility. To whom?
He personally trained some of his disciples.
No. Everywhere he went, yes.
The temple president.
Yes, he left it to the TPs, and there's a lot of letters about this to temple presidents. And Prabhupada's telling him, look, you must see, you must observe. How are they sincere? And one big measure of that was steadily following the regulative principles and chanting 16 rounds. So if you're able to sustain that over time and be cooperative and a good, you know, just a cooperative, good devotee, then you were a candidate for initiation. If ever a temple president, out of expedience, usually we need a pujari, we need a cook, right? Well, that's for second initiation. But we need people, right? We need people. Did it prematurely, and then the person leaves, easy come, easy go, Prabhupada's furious, especially second initiation, which is really, you know, before the sacred fire and the deities and the devotees and all this. You vow to, for life, do that. So, so Prabhupada, he himself delegated that responsibility. That was an extraordinary situation. As we saw in the first lesson of the seminar, the spiritual masters, that's not normal, and that's not sustainable, and that's not what Prabhupada wanted for the long term. That line from the purport, CC Adi 135, generally, the one who gives the most shiksha, he becomes the Diksha Guru. That's normal, that's natural. And therefore Prabhupada said, we need millions of gurus. Local guru-disciple culture. So we're slow doing that. you know. Yeah, so in the Disciples Course, people learn the right reasons for aspiring for a guru, the wrong reasons. You know, my guru's got more disciples than you. Did I tell the story about New Zealand? Did I mention this? About what happened when I presented this in New Zealand? Okay, so the vice president was the one who was arranging everything for me. And then I came, and he said, the first thing he said to me when I came was, I'm really happy you're doing this here, because, you know, we just had Vyasa Puja for His Holiness Jayapataka Swami, and my younger godbrothers and godsisters, they insisted on having a Vyasa Puja for Maharaj grander than Prabhupada's. And the reason they gave was that, you know, Prabhupada only initiated not even 5,000 disciples. Guru Maharaj, he's initiated 20, 30, whatever. It was a total numbers game for them, just because of the sheer number of disciples. So they had no concept of Prabhupada's position. They were just thinking in terms of numbers. So we have to be thoroughly, thoroughly, thoroughly educated in Prabhupada's life, his teachings, his mood, his mission, to really get who he is and who he is in our lives. Yeah. Yeah, great expectations, right? Both on the part of the guru and the part of the disciple. And then big mess later on. You know, divorce. I don't like you anymore. I want a new guru. It's high school stuff. You know, it's not serious. So let's go further into that and how we make it serious. Okay, Maharaj.
I just want a clarification on that statement, which is quite foundational, behaving one another for at least a year, cannot be done practically the way we're organized as a world movement. So then the power of attorney goes to the temple presidents to be the representative in order to fulfill this requirement? Is that how it's understood?
Well, that's what Prabhupada did in his time, and now we have so many more people who, if they're capable and ready, willing, and able, can do that. If the TP is too busy, because he's more of a manager, say, than a guru, he can delegate that too. But he's got to be on top of it, because Prabhupada wants us all to be trained, and he wants us to support the temples. I mean, it is more of a congregational movement now. Okay, times have changed. But nobody's independent. Everybody should be accountable. That's why, for example, His Holiness Radhanath Swami does have this counselor system, which, if it's done right, monitors people and their progress. And Niranjan Swami, he does this in the Ukraine. So everybody needs to be cared for and brought along. Otherwise, it's not real. It's another rubbish institution, as Prabhupada said. Don't make this another rubbish institution. Okay, let's go a little further into how we become qualified to take initiation. Okay, so in addition to taking guidance from bona fide spiritual masters, what else must we do to find our mission in Srila Prabhupada's mission? So for the next couple of slides, I owe a debt to His Holiness Shivaram Swami, who has come out with the first volume of his Varnashram series, Varnashram Compendium. And in the first volume, there's chapter 30, Determining One's Varna. And so he was taking from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, specifically a book that Thakur wrote called Sri Krishna Samhita. And there's a lot about how to become qualified to take initiation. So I posted this little waterfall because, what do I say here? A waterfall's journey. As water seeks its own level, so we all seek our true, authentic selves. We seek our identity, of course, as Krishna's servants, but specifically who we are in Prabhupada's mission, and who can help us be all we can be in that mission, who can help us make our best contributions. In his Sri Krishna Samhita, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur concludes that before settling our occupational duty, we need to purify our nature. In his Varnashram Compendium, Volume 1, Chapter 30, Determining One's Varna, His Holiness Shivaram Swami points out that by seriously and sincerely following the devotional life Srila Prabhupada has given us, we can purify our nature in 3 ways. Okay, who has the mic? Okay, so you want to read? Either, yeah.
Finding our mission requires purification. By rites of passage.
Rites of passage. Qualifying oneself, for example, for first and second initiation, and firmly committing oneself either to the path of celibacy or to the path of responsible marriage. For example, His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Purna Maharaj, when he teaches brahmacharya to his male students, he also teaches them Jai, Shri Shri Kishore Kishori, Shri Jai. When Gurukula Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Purna Maharaj, teaches his young male students about brahmacharya, then he also teaches them about grihastha. Because most people do go through the grihastha ashram. It's not common, it's not as common for people just to stay brahmachari their whole life. So he also teaches them about grihastha, because there's different responsibilities for brahmacharis and grihasthas. So when he does that, then the people who really are fit for brahmacharya will say to Maharaj something like, "Oh, thank you, Maharaj. I can see it's much more complicated and burdensome to take that grihastha step. I don't really feel I want to do that. I want to be a simple brahmachari. It's more austere, but it is simpler actually." And then the people among his young male students who actually showed inclinations toward marriage, then they also thank him. "Oh, thank you, Maharaj. Now I understand the responsibilities of grihastha, and I understand that as I will be as good a grihastha as I can, as I'm now a brahmachari. In other words, the more I learn sense control as a brahmachari, the better I will be able to control my senses in grihastha," which is really important. Grihastha doesn't mean grihameti, sense gratification. It means also means controlled, but it doesn't. It's in a different ashram, in a different way. Okay, so by rites of passage, by okay. So the next way we can get purified.
By education and training.
Education and training, immersing oneself in and allowing oneself to be transformed by systematic scriptural study. For example, a Bhakti Shastri degree program. Also, readily accepting counselor supervision. So the devotees have started this, VIHE, MI, and then different institutes around the world, so we can absorb ourselves, immerse ourselves in Prabhupada's teachings in a systematic way, and allow ourselves to be transformed by that. If we just do it on our own, it's more difficult. It's a rare person who can absorb him or herself in Prabhupada's teachings and just learn by hearing and do it systematically. Usually we need a support group for anything. Business people need support groups, artists, scientists. Everyone needs a sangha. So when you go to these courses, in the Holy Land, and you're doing it with other people, and there's regular evaluation, there's regular assessments, then you get more out of it. And you can actually, in that atmosphere, you can allow yourself to be changed by that and not hang on to your old prarabdha karmas, your old attitudes and opinions. It's a very powerful experience. And also, here's a hard one for Kali Yuga folks: readily accepting counselor supervision. I mean, in America it's like, don't tread on me, I can do it myself, I don't want to be accountable to you. Everybody wants to be independent. It doesn't work. We are dependent beings by nature. Only Krishna is the self-sufficient philosopher, the one who can do it all. Yes, Maharaj.
Rather than looking at it from that angle, look at it from the other side. I'm getting additional help. That's nice. I could use that. I'm actually getting extra mercy by accepting someone else who can also be representative of my spiritual master.
Yeah, that's the good attitude. In Nectar of Instruction preface, Prabhupada writes, advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the devotee, of the follower. It's all about attitude. Okay. And then another way we can get purified, here we go.
By devotional practices.
Simply regularly participating in Srila Prabhupada's full morning program, either at the temple or in one's own home. Prabhupada's early morning program for us includes the 5 most purifying practices. We've mentioned these. What are the 5 top principles in Nectar Devotion? Chanting Hare Krishna. You got the mic, right?
Read the Bhagavatam.
Yeah, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Worshipping the deity. Living in a holy place, and your apartment can be a holy place if you just have sacred images, sacred sound. And associating with devotees. But as I've mentioned, that doesn't mean hanging out, just hanging. It means serving each other and learning from each other. Yeah, that kind of association will take us up. Okay, we got to be fast.
You got to run.
And you got to raise your hand too.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's the way to signal him.
I thought I was getting teacher exemption.
Exemption. Well, even still, you got to give him time to get there.
Can you just briefly summarize rites of passage again? I didn't quite get it.
Okay, rites of passage.
This in a more succinct,
Yeah. Qualifying oneself for either or, first and second initiation, and firmly committing oneself either to the path of celibacy or to the path of responsible marriage. In other words, okay, we come in, what does Rupa Goswami say? Ado Shraddha. We come in and we're a little interested. This is interesting. Just that mentality, that this is Krishna consciousness is interesting. That's a kind of faith. Preliminary, like even curiosity. Tatak sadhu. So we start associating with devotees. And then then we decide, if we decide to commit, okay, I want to be like them, then we formalize that right in front of the deities and the sacred fire and the guru. But before that takes place, there has to be a change of heart, because one has been practicing the disciplines of bhakti. I've been chanting Hare Krishna, sincerely reading the books, associating with the devotees, and after 6 months, a year of that, for example, what did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta say? Yes, I will accept him as my disciple. I have marked him. He likes to hear. He does not go away. So as soon as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gave Prabhupada that answer to, who's going to hear our message? We have to first get rid of the British. It was a Gandhian kind of attitude. And then Bhaktisiddhanta said, oh no, Krishna consciousness is the urgent need of every living being. It can't wait for a change in politics. And Abhay Charan Dey was struck with wonder. Prabhupada told us later, I accepted him immediately, not officially, 11 years later, but in my heart. So he had a change of heart right there. And then he did seva. He helped open the Allahabad, Prayag, Gaudiya Math, the Bombay, that was later. He pleased his Guru Maharaj like anything. Oh, that was later too. Anyway, he was studying Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He was helping, he was doing service, he was chanting rounds, So he was going through the process to qualify himself for initiation. And if we're really ready for initiation, then our consciousness is changing. I mean, bhakti is super powerful. If we actually do it, it's a science. The more we do it properly, then the more we get the result. If I'm not getting a taste, if I'm feeling material desires, if I'm, mad at the devotees, then there's something wrong there. We have to take inventory. What am I doing from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep? How am I associating with the devotees? So, yeah, that's rite of passage from Shraddha to Sadhu Sangha to Bhajana Kriya. And that's only the third step. There's so many other steps. Anartha Vritti, that's a big one, giving up unwanted habits. Is that okay for now? Okay. All right, so let's see here. Once our nature has been sufficiently purified, this is all, remember, this is all in the service of finding our varna, our mission in the mission. Once our nature has been sufficiently purified, we are ready to settle our varna, our mission in Srila Prabhupada's mission. But at the same time, there's more to qualifying ourselves to knowing our varna. Okay, so it takes a village, what do the Africans say, to raise a child, right? So, yeah, finding our mission requires not only purification, but consultation. When I was researching this seminar series in the very beginning, the late, great Gopi Puranadana Prabhu was still with us, at the time our foremost Sanskrit Bengali scholar. It was 2011, it was April in Hawaii when I started researching. Gopi was still on the planet until September. I asked him a lot of questions. So, did I mention this already? I can't remember, okay. So I said, Gopi Puranadana Prabhu, who's the deliverer here? Is it the Diksha Guru? Is it the founder Acharya? Is it the prominent Shiksha Guru? Krishna says in the Gita, Aham tvang sarvapabhebhyo moksha yashyami, I will deliver you from all sinful reactions. So, who's the deliverer? So Gopi Puranadana Prabhu he said, he got the email while he was on a train in China. I don't have all my references at my fingertips right now, Sri Prabhu, but I know from studying Srila Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas that if I tried to pin Sri Jiva down to one person, I could not do it. Because just as it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a sampradaya to raise a sadhaka. It's not just one person. And if you want to say one person, say it's Krishna manifesting his mercy through so many different people. That was 2 slides in lesson 1. The different gurus are different expressions, manifestations of Krishna's mercy. What is that line? Padma Purana. Sampradaya vihinaye mantraste nishpalamata. Unless one receives the mantra, even the Hare Krishna mantra, from somebody coming in disciplic succession, a community of Vaishnavas, pure devotees, nishpalamata. It won't have the full. You won't get the result. If we simply hear from people who are making a business out of chanting Hare Krishna, as happens nowadays, but we're not getting it ultimately in parampara, we're not going to get Shuddhanam, we're not going to get the pure name, we're not going to get pure love of God. We have to connect ultimately with the pure devotee. For example, in my generation, the counterculture poet Allen Ginsberg, who did service for Prabhupada. Before he met Prabhupada, he went to India in 1963. He heard the Hare Krishna mantra, and he brought it back to America. He was chanting Hare Krishna at Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech in that rally, that freedom in 63, 64, protesting the Vietnam War. He was really taken with a mantra that he heard in India. But people weren't so much taking notice of it or of him. And then, in 66, when he started doing seva for Prabhupada at 22nd Avenue, then his chanting started having an effect. In 1969, Prabhupada and Allen Ginsberg blew the roof off, metaphorically speaking, the Judson Auditorium in Columbus, Ohio State University, and also at the Family Dog Auditorium in San Francisco. Then his chanting had effect, and he wasn't even following the regulated principles of bhakti, but now he was chanting he was connected with Swami Bhaktivedanta, doing seva, a lot of seva for Prabhupada, and so his chanting had more effect. So it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a sampradaya to raise a sadhika. Let's see what I say here. Okay. So in his conclusion to Sri Krishna Samhita, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also describes a collective process for determining one's varna, one's calling, involving family elders, the family priest or acharya, and village leaders. These senior well-wishers focused on the person's nature, especially the qualities that over time dominated the individual's personality and behavior, as well as the person's attraction to a particular work. So the main takeaway for us, so that was late 19th century, right? So the main takeaway for us now in the 21st century is that our varna should be ascertained in consultation with senior devotees who have known us for some time. Okay, so say I'm a typical Kali Yuga guy and I've got a lot of mixed consciousness, different tendencies toward work. But still, over time, if we allow people to get to know us, if we're not always just traveling around whimsically, there's good travel and there's whimsical travel. Prabhupada called it wanderlust. Then people will notice, people who know us over time, they will see our default modes, what it always comes back to for us. I may have different tendencies toward work, but over time, it may always come back to something. So let's do a little informal quick Q&A on this. What's that activity, if you've ever thought about this, doing which you forget time? Or as the self-help people say, what's your passion? Now, if you can pin it down to something as specific as possible, that's a good hint of your mission in the mission. So would anyone like to share with us? What's that activity doing which you forget time? It's so much you're just in the Krishna zone. That's you. We got Kevin, Bhakti Kevin. He already knows.
Kirtan.
Kirtan, okay. That's when everything becomes timeless. Well, that's a hint. You know? If that's a hint. Now, you're Bhakti Kevin. How long have you been coming around here at the temple?
2013.
Okay, well that's good. I like when people take their time to getting initiated and finding their mission in the mission, because it does take time. It's not a snap thing. Anyone else? No, Mataji, you do too many things, right?
Yeah, I think interestingly for me, when I step into the temple and any activity, it's very absorbing.
When you step into the temple, it becomes timeless. Now, you got to keep the trains running on time. You're the TP. I'm making a joke.
I personally like a lot to be in the kitchen and on the altar. And Chandramuli Maharaj will be shocked to hear this, but I like to clean. So whenever I get time, I like to clean in the temple. So
Maharaj is going to, no? Yeah? What's your favorite?
I was just responding to the shock I was supposed to do, that's all.
What was that? I missed that.
It's a inside joke. So, yeah. I mean, there's a few things. I don't want to reveal these things.
A sadhu has no secrets, Maharaj.
Reading. Bhagavatam.
Aye.
In fact, when I have to stop because of other things, I become a little unhappy. Bhagavatam.
Okay, good. If you had a, yeah, you might, here's a good way to determine that. You might have a few things, but then if it came down to, if they were going to take everything away but one thing, right? Oh, I must have that. It's my life and soul. Mataji, you want to? No? Okay.
Personally, like when Maharaj was saying, when he's reading Bhagavatam and it gets interrupted, it's almost like, you don't want to be interrupted. For me, it's chanting. But tragically, every time I go with that intention, with that sankalpa, there's always an emergency and there's always an interruption. So it's almost like very frustrating. But chanting, definitely.
That's one reason I have scrupulously avoided very devotional places like altars and kitchens. Because I can see there's no end, or I mean, what I should have said, management. Management never ends. It's like trying to hold up the whole world with skinny legs, right? And it always falls back on the TP to cover the service. Okay, but if you can identify that seva, doing which you really do forget time because it's so much you, that's a big hint in what our mission and the mission can be. And that mission and the mission also evolves as we move through the ashrams. Right? Yeah, because, if, like Prabhupada told that lady earlier in that letter, for you, child worship, that's your deity worship. And Prabhupada was so pleased with book distribution, but he did not want her to, give her little boy to somebody else while she's out distributing books. No, her job is to raise a Vaishnav by giving him a good, secure, solid foundation. Okay, so let's see here. Yes.
Even previously when you mentioned that for a mother, the child is the deity, and Prabhupada said taking care of your child is like deity worship. But in the modern context, I'm a mother, and I know several other mothers, who have children, but they are given responsibilities to do, and sometimes there is a conflict in your role as a mother and in your role as whatever you're doing. How do you balance that?
Because I missed a few words in the beginning, because you asked them to do service and they're busy being a mother or something?
Yeah, the reality is that it's not that women, we are okay with the women just taking care of the kids. We also give services to the women. And I do hear a lot, and in my own personal life, sometimes those services take over what you need to do as a mother. So there is always this, it's not, we know what Prabhupada said, but in ground level, the reality is something else.
Okay, well, raising a Vaishnava or a Vaishnavi is glorious, and that really is the first business of parents, to make sure that their kids learn in the home, make the home an ashram, so they learn basic manners and etiquette and education. That's got to be number one. And then if they do have time, like maybe they take, if there are two parents these days, you never know, then they can take turns maybe doing seva at the temple. But that really is their first business. And if there happens to be some devotee educational organization, to support that. Prabhupada wanted the parents to support the Gurukula, for example. So yeah, it's a balance. Everything's a balance, and if you're not sure about that, how you're balancing, then perhaps you have to consult your Diksha Shiksha gurus, if they're agreeable to that kind of a question. Some gurus don't want to touch that stuff, but others, especially if the gurus have been through that ashram. They'll have something really experiential to share with you. If not, then they may defer to some other grihastha shiksha or diksha gurus. Okay, so let's keep moving on this. Let's see. With trusted seniors who know us well. If I don't make myself available to trusted seniors, maybe nobody knows me, because I've been kind of a shadowy devotee. Moving, what do they say? It's harder to hit a moving target. But if I'm moving so much that nobody really knows me, then that's not good, because I don't have any kind of record that people can refer to or have some experience with me. Okay, so let's look at another. Who else we have to consult with? Oh, this is really interesting. Bhaktivinoda Thakur. With qualified seers of our past, present, and future. Quote, seers refers to qualified Vaishnava astrologers who can help guide us to the supreme destination. In his 1948 essay, quote, The Conception of Gita Nagari, Part 2, Srila Prabhupada writes that children should be educated, quote, by a test of practical psychology and by examination of the birth horoscope of the child. And in his purport to Bhagavatam 10.8.5, Prabhupada comments, quote, it is the duty of a father to understand the astrological position of his children and do what is needed for their happiness. So how do I put it here? If qualified Vaishnava astrologers confirm in our stars what our seniors observe about us on the ground, that will help us confidently settle our varna, our mission in his mission. Because when we're born, there's a certain blueprint of our karma that appears in the sky. And how that karma indicates a certain set of potentials to be fulfilled. And we can either fulfill them positively or negatively or, hopefully, transcendentally. Like in Prabhupada's horoscope, he was supposed to have been very, very wealthy. And Prabhupada, knowing that, when he did meet his Guru Maharaj, he told us, I wanted to join immediately, but I couldn't because I had a family. I had a wife and a daughter, and to just abandon them would have been injustice. Prabhupada used the word injustice. So then his strategy became, okay, if I'm destined to be wealthy, then I'll do that. I will become wealthy in business, and then when the family phase of the life is wound down, the kids are grown, and they're on their own, either married or working or both nowadays. And the wife is secure with perhaps the elder son. That was the old system. Then I'm free to use that accumulated wealth for the mission. That was Prabhupada's strategy. Krishna did not allow him to do that. 3 times Prabhupada built up the business and then collapse. 2nd time. 3rd time. So every time the business failed, Prabhupada would quote a verse from the Bhagavatam. Anybody know what the verse was?
I can't quote the whole verse. Yasyaham nigmanugranai. It's from the 10th canto, 88th chapter.
88th verse.
88th verse.
Yasyaham anugranami harishe tadanangshanai means, just paraphrase.
Well, you know, this person, he's...
when one is very sincere,
and then he's sincere to serve the family, but they just reject him.
When one is very sincere devotee, this is Krishna, but at the same time he's very entangled in his worldly affairs, the first installment of my mercy is,
I take everything away.
I take everything away, so that
the family members think he's completely useless.
Yes, so the family thinks he's completely incompetent, And they want nothing to do with this poor fellow.
Sometimes we say, if Krishna is kind, he gives you everything. If he's really kind, he takes everything away.
That's why most people would rather approach Shiva, Lord Shiva, right? He's easily pleased, and he's meditating on the Lord, so he just easily gives them boons. Just, okay, take that, you know, don't bother me.
That was really exemplified in Prabhupada's life when he was in that Vrindavan era. When everything was taken away, he says, those poems he wrote explaining his past family and how, just when he said, I just think of all the family members, but now it's just a list of names.
Just a list, and it gives me a laugh.
It gives me a laugh.
Vrindavan Bhajan. I'm sitting here alone in Vrindavan, but I have no money. So what to do? I can't, you know. And my family, they're just a list of names. Yeah, it's Prabhupada expressing. So that's, so, but Prabhupada did become wealthy. Later, Krishna gave everything to Prabhupada. So many followers, so much Lakshmi at his disposal, so many books published, so many temples, because Krishna wanted us to see the example Prabhupada used. How did Prabhupada use all of that? Didn't waste a farthing, didn't waste a second. That's why we were willing to do anything for Prabhupada, because he was working harder than all of us. Amidst all this facility, Prabhupada just kept moving. He just kept moving, and he was unbelievable. So we just wanted to give our lives to such a person who was working harder than anybody to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. As Prabhupada said to Harishari Prabhu, my desire is to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere at once. Therefore, we could not keep up with him. But he was fabulously wealthy. That's why it was later on, I forget who was it, Fortune 500 or somebody did this piece on the people who made it big after 50. Who did that? I forget. Was it CNN or Forbes or one of these? Yeah, and because of Prabhupada's, they were just going by the externals. You know, 108 centers that he could live in, so many books published, so many followers. They were impressed on the material level, right? They didn't really understand the spiritual significance. How did we get on that? I forget. Oh, so qualified. Yeah, so astrology, Prabhupada also lampoons it. He also bashes it. But it has its place. Of course, the trick is to find a qualified astrologer, Vaishnava astrologer, who can help you use those potentials in devotional service, not for fame or fortune or whatever. And that's the trick, how to use all that for Krishna. So, let's see here. Yeah, so if those astrologers can confirm about us and the stars, what our seniors observe about us on the ground, then we got something going there. In 1987, I went to Vrindavan for the first VIHE, the first higher education attempt. Borijan Prabhu had launched it. And one big agenda I had, I wanted to find out my mission in the mission. I like to teach and I like to write. So I wanted to find out what I should do. So you know what, here's how it went. I was taking the courses like Vaishnava Etiquette by Bhakti Charu Maharaj, Clear Thinking and Strong Speaking by Jayadwada Maharaj, a bunch of others, something by Borijan, I forget. Anyway, so then I'd go into Krishna Balaram Mandir and I'd bow down to the deities and I'd say, please Lord, please reveal what I should do, what direction I should go. Should it be teaching or writing? And then I'd come out of the mandir and inevitably somebody would come up to me, hey Sureshwar, when are you going to write another BTG article? Hey Sureshwar, when are you going to teach a class? So the message was very clear over the time. Krishna was telling me, hey, do both. They go together, teaching and writing. Don't make it either or, make it both and. So that was powerful. And how did the Lord reveal that? Through the devotees. That's who we have. At the end of the day, we have each other, you know, to understand what the Lord wants us to do. So we always have to seek good sangha. Okay, with qualified seers, what time is it anyway? Oh, just about over here, but here we go. Where's the mic? All right, so somebody, Mataji, you want to read? The third one.
With teachers and advisors in a Varnashram college.
So remember, that's what Prabhupada wants us to organize ourselves along Varnashram lines, and the first stop's the temple for basic training, and then once you have basic training, like in the military, everybody has the same basic training. But then, after basics, then they see your tendency toward work, and then they start specializing, right? So in the Varnashram college, then you start getting to really know your mission and the mission, what you are in Prabhupada's mission. So, what did Prabhupada say? Srila Prabhupada assigned a crucial role to the Varnashram college for the, quote, re-spiritualization of human society, starting with ISKCON. Prabhupada issued a long-standing order, it's been 44 years now, on this point, during a morning walk in Vrindavan on March 12, 1974. Everywhere we have got our center, a Varnashram college should be established to train 4 divisions. 1 class Brahmana, 1 class Kshatriya, 1 class Vaishya, 1 class Shudra. But everyone will be elevated to the spiritual platform by the spiritual activities we have prescribed. It's not just Varna, it's Varna Ashram. All Varna and no Ashram makes Johnny a dull boy. We say all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy in America. So all Varna and no Ashram means you're missing that taste that will enable us to give up our material desires. We have to get to know Krishna. That's the goal, and fall in love with Krishna. That's possible when you have an ashram. Jai Shri Shri Kishore Kishori. Above all, we must remember that Srila Prabhupada, as our founder Acharya, remains our foundational inspiration and guide for finding our mission in his mission. Like, sometimes I think, if I came into ISKCON today, instead of being 71 years old, say I would just take the 1 and the 7 and reverse them, say I was 17. Yeah! Those days are gone. But say I was 17. So if I were lucky, I would meet devotees who would insist that I get thoroughly grounded in Srila Prabhupada, his life, his teachings, mood, mission. And then, after some time, maybe years later, like Kevin said, 2013, you been here? Yeah, that's good. I would take my sweet time in getting to know Srila Prabhupada, serving his mission, and then after some time, with the help of senior Vaishnavas, maybe I would start aspiring. It happens differently for everybody. It could happen right away, but usually these things take time. And then, okay, so I'm going to give you a little question here. I like to walk. Every day I go down to the lake, right? Just to get out of the house and get some spiritual and material exercise. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I take a vigorous japa walk down to the lake. And I like drama. I like to be in plays. So who might I approach for initiation today? You know somebody who likes to walk a lot, who likes to do dramas? Bhakti Marg Swami. I told him that, and he just laughed. Anyway, it's good to connect with an aspect of Prabhupada's mission that naturally resonates with our nature, our spirit, as Prabhupada said. Because those people who are doing that aspect, they can help us develop that nature and help us be all we can be. I'm going to end the slides with the famous slides from Srila Prabhupada. You can read this, Mataji. Let's be all we can be in our founder Acharya's mission. This is a famous quote from a purport to 1532 Bhagavatam.
It does not matter what one is. One must dedicate everything in the service of the Lord. If one is a learned scholar, scientist, philosopher, poet, etc., then he should employ his learning to establish the supremacy of the Lord. Similarly, if one is a businessman, an industrialist, an agriculturalist, etc., then one should spend his hard-earned money for the cause of the Lord. One should try to engage in the service of the Lord, everything.
Everything.
For which one has specific attraction, and that is the way of peace and prosperity, and that is a remedial measure for all the miseries of material existence. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.32 purport.
Right. So again, the slogan back in the early days of ISKCON was, do the needful, Prabhu, forget about your propensity. But over time, Prabhupada saw that if we're going to make it in Krishna consciousness, go the distance, we need to engage our natures in Krishna service, and that's the needful. As we pledge our shared allegiance to and draw our deepest inspiration from our founder Acharya, all of us will receive the help we need to find our natural place serving Srila Prabhupada's mission, and following his example, come to execute that mission solely for the pleasure of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki? Okay. Let's do lesson outcomes. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to explain the importance of knowing and doing one's own duty, as well as why that can be difficult. We should be able to identify guides who can help us find our mission in life, identify the responsibilities of prospective guru and prospective disciple, explain how finding our mission requires purification and consultation, and finally identify Srila Prabhupada as our foundational guide for finding our mission in his mission. So this afternoon, as we find and develop our mission to help our founder Acharya re-spiritualize human society, we'll be better able to develop real love for him. In the next lesson, we'll look at why that intimacy with Srila Prabhupada that we hanker for can be so elusive, hard to find. Okay. So, anyway, we're late, but what time is lunch ready, Mataji? 1:10. Okay, so we do have a half hour before you can take prasad. So, and again, ask me questions in public. Don't come to me after the lesson and whisper, "I didn't want to say this in front of all the Prabhus," but shh, 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 shh. No, you're asking for the benefit of everyone. Or if you're really embarrassed, then, come and see me later or something. But anyway, okay. Subal Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. You mentioned about the motto that was in the beginning, of Prabhupada's movement of do the needful. I would say that I have spent my whole life in Krishna consciousness doing the needful, and it feels that I don't have the space to ever even investigate something about what is very natural for me. You ask that question, what is that you can wait, the time disappears. And for me, it's music. I grew up like that. But never had the chance to actually go deeper. Always was, service, do the needful. And I'm happy about it. But when I look back at that space, that is my nature, there's a little bit of, like sadness, because I never had, and I don't know if I will have the chance to ever, look at that. What do you do? Or is there a time that you're supposed to do that in able to be the best that you could, because I have this nature, and it's, I dream with that stuff,
What's that service doing which you forget time?
Music. Well, Kirtan does that, but although, the beginning of my Krishna consciousness was 7 days out in Harinam, which was ecstasy for me, I really didn't have the time to actually really, really go deep in learning, going deep into Kirtan. It was just out there,
You were out in public doing Kirtan, but
Kirtan,
you wanted to
learn the instruments very well, learn all that type of going deeper into the service and becoming, better, because it's easy for me.
Well, it's never too late to learn, but of course, when Prabhupada was asked, why are your followers young mostly, Prabhupada said, so what's the time for education? So can I ask your age now, your body's age?
57.
Oh, you're a kid. 57. So, and you've been in ISKCON how long?
35 years.
Okay. Well, ISKCON, to be fair, is still in its pre-Varnashram stage. So you still do find that. At the same time, you will notice that ISKCON tends to thrive in places where the leaders do make it a priority to help people find, their best potential in the mission. Because that's ultimately what's satisfying. And that's what Krishna says right in the Gita. Now hear from me how by following one's qualities of work, every person can become perfect by worship of the Lord. So, yeah, we do owe it to ourselves, to Prabhupada, to the mission, to find that. Now, when that happens, will vary from person to person. So somehow, even though you have that strong musical passion or taste, you feel it hasn't been fully manifest or developed. I haven't served and lived with you over the years, so I can't really say why. But people who know you better than I, and a daily, from the ground, will be able to say why. Because obviously, when I've been here now, 10 days or something? So I think, okay, I got to call Subal. It's like, this is the man, And with Prabhupada, too. I never knew Tamal Krishna Maharaj was so literary and so culturally astute until in 1987 he came out with, what was it called? The drama of Lord Jagannath, Jagannath Priya Natakam. He was always the heavy, the general, So when Prabhupada wanted something done in the movement, call Tamal. He was the one who, I didn't know Tamal Krishna Maharaj could be such a conscientious, attentive, first-class servant. That's usually, Prabhupada would say, why are you my servant? You're rotting here. You should be out preaching. This is what he told Harikesh. He was Harikesh's Prabhupada's secretary. And Prabhupada insisted he go to Russia and Eastern Europe, the communist countries. And Harikesh thought that Prabhupada was sending him away, banning him. And then finally at the end, Prabhupada said, do you understand why because I knew this guy was just rotting, typing my letters. Of course it's a great service, but he knew that this Harikesh, he was capable of doing so much more. So, not having served with you over the years, I don't really know if this may be what you're doing as being the man. Maybe that's your mission in the mission, it's become the default setting here in Chicago. How long have you been in Chicago?
In this temple for 3 years.
Oh, that's not so long. So it seems like you're a valuable man, Mataji. Mataji's like... I don't know, Prabhu. I can't give you a very customized, personalized answer because I don't know that. But I know from just talking to you and the way, I mean, he answers his phone. As soon as the phone rings, it's, yes, Prabhuji, he's right there. Huh? Yeah, if you want more time to develop your music, you better get off the availability zone. Anyway, I think that's a job for people who know you better than I. But it's great. I mean, thank you for being there for me. Okay, we got some time before lunch is served. Anybody else? Everybody's afraid. There's Gokulananda. He's another one, right? Well, I think he's found his mission. He wants to be a counselor, right? He wanted to help devotees. Yeah? That's a glorious. I think every temple needs at least 10 counselors, right?
I got one.
Okay, Maharaj.
It's not a question. Can I just give an example of what you're saying? When Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, the head of the Guru Kul came to see Srila Prabhupada.
Guru who?
The head of the Guru Kul.
Oh, the Guru.
Who was taking care of the younger boys, and he gave a report. And that report is actually recorded in a dialogue. And then in part of the report he was explaining what the boys do, and Prabhupada was adjusting it as far as the schedule and the activities. And then at one point he said, we have this one boy, he just disrupts the whole class. And you know, and he always looks for an opportunity to do something disruptive. And Prabhupada said, obviously he's not Brahminically inclined. So remove him from the Gurukul and get him on farm work. He's more inclined to do hard work. That way his energies will be more, utilized in the right way. So this is an example of seeing that this person, although they're trying to train him in one way, wasn't adapting to the training at all. So he moved him out of there. That's just I just wanted to make that even from the negative point, you have to see what a person is not as far as what they are.
Yeah. And that first, I know that boy, and he lived at Gitanagari for some time. So, okay, going once, going twice. Forever hold your peace. So we're going to reconvene at 2:30 for, yes, definitely it is the most intense lesson of the seminar. To love is to cooperate. Wow. It's really all about how to find unity and diversity, because we're all very different people. But we all have to learn how to get along and cooperate too. So let's explore that. So that means don't eat too much. Or if you do, then take a nap and then come here. Otherwise you'll be napping in the chair. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.